Hello, it is Monday the 20th December and welcome to the Seasiders Pod match reaction show. After 8 games of heartache, Neil Critchley's Tangerine Army are back to winning ways with a comprehensive 3-1 victory over Peterborough. I'm Connor Hamilton and I'm delighted to be joined by our esteemed panel for the next hour as we dissect all the key talking points from our victory over the Posh. First up, we have the beloved Mr. Nick Smith. Hello, Nick.
Good evening, Connor. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. We're also joined by internet sensation Mr. Joe Afton. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
And then finally, completing our lineup is Matthew Jones, writer of Mitch Cook's Left Foot. Must-read material that I think most Blackpool fans have probably read by now. Hello, Matt/Mitch.
Who is on mute.
There we go. You don't have to read it. It's next.
There's always one of us does that.
There we go.
Now, I was just about to remark that you were being unusually quiet. So, a bit of an unusual game, this one, in that we probably need to begin with a few COVID and lineup-related points before we start talking about the game itself. Blackpool v Peterborough was, I think, one of 5 games taking place on Saturday, with the other 5 postponed due to COVID-19 outbreaks. I guess, Matt, beginning with you, kind of how surprised were you that the game went ahead, if at all? And how optimistic are you about the other festive fixtures being played?
I don't know. I was just happy the game went ahead, to be honest. I had a feeling. I had a feeling, and it felt like the atmosphere at the ground suggested that this might be the last time we were in the ground for a little while. But I don't know. I don't know how true that is. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about COVID. The world is full of people speculating about COVID and banging on as if they actually know anything about it and saying this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this isn't going to happen, that's not going to happen. This should happen, this shouldn't happen. And I just want to watch some football. So I was very happy it went ahead. I've seen there's already been quite a lot of cancellations of upcoming games. So, we're in the lap of the gods or the lap of the virus, aren't we? As regards Boxing Day, and I suppose there will come a tipping point if most games are off. Then there'll come a tipping point where they do something about it. But I can't personally see the point of calling off football matches if without action in wider society. That just seems a bit pointless to be calling off football games. It's not really going to make any impact on COVID figures. So if we can play, I want to play. I would be happy, and I don't mean this as a joke, I would actually be happy watching a game of 9v9 just to get a game. People, that's where my head's at.
Fair enough. No, I think if games are beginning to be called off, or big gatherings of people begin to become restricted, maybe it'll behoove us all to just book a couple of conference rooms in the BFC hotel and call it a business meeting, because that seems to be okay now. Yes. Attendance at the ground was kind of below average for even this time of year, around 10,000, I think, with really very few away fans coming up for the journey. Nick, kind of what's your view on the dip and the drivers of that?
I think it's a combination, isn't it? I suppose if you look at the following from Peterborough, it wasn't great, but when you consider everything, you probably can't blame them. They're setting off thinking, is the game even going to go ahead? It's pre-Christmas, so people have probably got that in mind as well. And there'll be people who, because of COVID, wanted to give it a miss. So I wasn't surprised with what the attendance was. I said we'll probably be lucky to break 10,000 with all of those factors. And then you've got the whole having to show COVID pass or a negative test, which again will have put some people off. So overall, I wasn't really surprised to see, what the attendance was. I have to say, going in, we went down there a bit early, and there was no issues getting in. It was, when I was there, certainly it seemed well organised, and they just checked you, and you got in relatively quickly. So I don't know what it was like. We probably got there about 25 to something like that. So earlier than normal. So I don't know if it got a bit busier towards kickoff, but there was no issues for me getting in, so that was good to see.
No, same. I got in around 20 past and no issues. And it was actually I was surprised at how comprehensive the check was. It wasn't just like a tick box exercise. Did check the ticket, did check the COVID pass match ticket, and also asked me for ID, which I luckily had on me. So at least it shows the club is taking this seriously. And I guess kind of one thing that also shows how seriously the club is taking COVID is around. Actually, I think Richard Keogh was our only COVID-19 scratch, kind of only player not available for selection because of COVID-19. Kind of Joe, kind of how impressive is that, kind of given the postponements elsewhere in the league? What does that say to you?
It says to me that he probably said hello to a few of his mates at Derby after the game, because they're absolutely riddled with it, aren't they? So I wouldn't be surprised if he caught it catching up with a few former teammates at Derby County. But yeah, obviously, as Nick said, the checks were very stringent. Whether you had it on your phone, whether you had it an actual lateral flow test results, I think that might have actually paid dividend to a few people not being able to go, because my dad doesn't have a mobile phone because he doesn't believe in them, which is very strange because they do exist. But yeah, he's just a very anti-modern technology, and I'm sure there'll be lots of older supporters that don't have mobile phones that's probably the reason they didn't go to the game, because they've got no way of showing that they've got this COVID passport. But as far as players go, I'm with Matt in the frame of mind that play on until we've not got enough players. If you've not got enough players to play a game, then obviously you can't. As far as feeling safe going to games, I think that's down to individual choices. I wouldn't blame anybody for not feeling confident enough going to a game. But at the end of the day, if we've all been double jabbed, triple jabbed, if we've got these COVID passports, then what's the point of bloody having it all if we can't go out to places? Do you know what I mean?
Very much so. I think one striking stat I saw last week was, I think, 25, a quarter of EFL players just aren't planning to get vaccinated, etc. Have no intentions of doing that. And I do worry that's going to lead to kind of more games being called off and cases being high. There's
a really good article on that I read. I don't know if anybody knows John Nicholson, who's he writes for Football 365, but he's done. Doug obviously knows him, big fan of Johnny the Nick. He's done a couple of really, really good books on the finances of football and stuff. But he wrote a really interesting article about how kind of the psychology of players not getting vaccinated, and it was a really interesting read. It was just kind of the whole sort of how footballers. You can understand, in a sense, why footballers would be hesitant about something that might even have sort of a 1% impact on their performance, because they live right on the edge of sort of what their bodies can do. And it was quite an interesting article, basically calling for the league to take stronger action and the league to mandate vaccines, because essentially a lot of footballers won't get vaccinated if they believe it'll give them even the most fractional disadvantage against somebody else who might not get vaccinated and therefore have that fractional advantage. It was quite thought-provoking.
Yeah, interesting. Please do send the link to the article, and I'll put it into the chats in all the places and stuff. Yeah, and I know Bayern checked their local state labour laws, and Bayern Munich were, we can force players to get vaccinated. I'm going to do that. I know Gerrard has come out and said that Aston Villa vaccination is going to play a big part of their transfer strategy in January. So it does seem like clubs are certainly taking it more and more into account on decision making, even if leagues aren't taking that action. David also thinks that we should insist players be vaccinated. Fair enough. We should expect players to have the same requirements as fans.
I don't want to be a pedant, but we don't have to be vaccinated to get in. You just have to have a lateral flow test, don't you?
Mm.
You don't actually have to be vaccinated.
True.
Very true. Very true. All right. Well, after that brief interlude on COVID, it's time to go into our wonderful lineups. Like I say, only Richard Keogh missing due to being a COVID-19 scratch. Matt, I know over the last couple of weeks, the Mitch Cook's Left Foot blog has produced a variety of Mitch Cook's left field stats around points per game when certain players are playing in certain positions. What does this lineup say to you around our statistical chances of winning?
Well, Jimmy Husband's not at left back, which is that's the magic number. If he's at left back, then we win. I think 91% of. Well, no, we don't win 91% of games. But I think we've only lost about 6% of games that Husband's played at left back. But we have got Jordan Gabriel at right back, and thanks to it was actually Josh Melling's idea. I worked out points per game when Jordan Gabriel plays. And we this year we take 1.67 points per game when Jordan Gabriel plays, which would leave us on I think 72 or 74 points for the season. So yeah, good. Jordan Gabriel playing was good, but not as good as Jimmy Husband being at left back.
Okay, good to know. So what you're saying is if Jordan Gabriel starts every game at right back, we'll be on playoff form.
Yes. And if Jimmy Husband starts every game at left back, then we'll break all known sporting records.
Okay, Champions League in 2 years in that case.
At least.
Fair enough. Nick, what were your main takeaways from the lineup?
Well, I was quite happy with it because normally at about 2:00 my phone starts pinging in the WhatsApp group and it's normally loads of messages saying what's the formation, can't believe he's playing, didn't see that coming, wasn't expecting that. And looking at it, I just thought it's a bit more back to basics, if you like, not tinkering too much, and pretty much what I would have gone with. So I was pleased to see Gabriel back in. Obviously Grimshaw comes in with Maxwell's injury, and he seems to be sticking with Husband at centre-half if Keogh's not available. Doesn't seem to want to play Gretterson for whatever reason. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind James Husband at centre-half. I think he does okay. So overall, I thought it was a pretty decent lineup, especially after the last few weeks where you've kind of been scratching your head a bit and thinking we've not given ourselves our best chance there and ended up losing games. So I was pleased with it overall.
Excellent. Yeah, we're getting a lot of guilt for Gabriel in the comments. Sean saying he genuinely improves 2 or 3 players around him. Riffrat saying Jimmy Husband doesn't play the beautifully threaded through ball that James does in the build-up to the first goal, which is, but he was also at centre-back, which I guess limits it, although equitably play a similar goal later. We'll come on to all of that at a later point. At this point, I do want to call out Sean there in the comments, living at large, saying he's a hero like Richard Keogh being wiped out by COVID.
They have quite similar hairstyles, do you not think? I've thought this for a while, that Sean's kind of side sweep is actually quite Keogh-esque.
If maybe they go to the same barbers, maybe they actually got it from the same person.
Maybe they were at the side sweep club and that's
Maybe,
got it off
maybe.
each other.
Well, all I want to point out is that since Sean became Lank's live reporter, kind of took on those formal responsibilities, Blackpool haven't won a game. And then the first game he was unable to attend due to COVID. We won 3-1. So I'm not sure Sean should ever be allowed back into Bloomfield Road, just for the good of the club, as I'm sure you understand. And maybe we need to find him a permanent seat somewhere like Deepdale, so we can take the curse there. All right, we'll move on to the game itself now that we've finished Sean Bassing. Paul Ellis have a good point there, just on the last comment, saying it's 2 up front at last. We did move from a 4-2-3-1 to a 4-4-2. But onto the game itself, I know we started seemingly on top with Gary Goals flicking it on for Bowler and Lavery to cause terror. But around 11 minutes in, Peterborough score with their first real chance of the game. Their right centre-back, Knight, plays a beautiful through ball to Dembele, who dribbles past Grimshaw, shoots into an empty net. Nick, what were your thoughts on the goal? Fair reflection of the play?
Probably not at that point. To be fair, it was a decent through ball. But having watched the highlights again, I wonder whether we could have closed down a bit sooner. He did have a lot of space in the middle of the park to pick that pass. And to be fair, it was a decent finish. He's timed his run, took it round Grimshaw. I can't really fault him. He's got to come out, and he slots it home. He wasn't a bad player for them, to be fair, that Dembele. I thought he was a bit of a handful, but at that point, you're just thinking, I'm not saying it was a must win, but you 1-0 down. I'm thinking if we don't get this, not winning 8 games, it makes it difficult, doesn't it, going into the Christmas period? But thankfully, as the half went on, we came back into it.
I know. I want to pick up on what you said there, and feeling like a must-win and the atmosphere getting quite nervy. Now, I certainly felt, particularly when at 1-1, and even persisted into particularly at 1-0, and even persisting into kind of 1-1 period, it felt to me a lot in the ground like the fans were on the backs of the players in kind of a way I hadn't quite experienced yet this season. I felt like there were more groans or jeers when stuff went wrong than maybe had been in the past. Particularly at the start towards Josh Bowler, where I was, although he soon shut us all up.
I don't know. I thought the opposite, if anything. I thought that, obviously, I don't know if you went to Derby or not, but I thought Derby was actually quite a fractious atmosphere. That was, there were sort of people shouting, nothing massive, but, sort of, come all the way to watch this crap, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Whereas I thought, actually, when we went a goal behind, I thought it must be just where different places we sat, but I thought people seemed to get behind them a bit. And I think that, had they started passing along the back line for 20 minutes, then it might have got quite fractious. But I think what got the crowd behind them was they just went, they did go at them again fairly quickly and re-establish themselves on top. I did think it was quite a weird atmosphere, though. I felt like, I mentioned that at the beginning, it just felt quite almost slightly anxious atmosphere, but I didn't really put that down to the football, to be honest.
Fair enough. Yeah. Steve rightfully calling out, it didn't feel like that in the north. I'm aware from my seats in the west with the prawn sandwich brigade, I'll probably get a very different atmosphere. And Sean saying that anyone who went to Derby was worth at least 3 games worth of groans, which I think I can disagree with. A couple of people put in the comments saying that, David saying he thinks Marv bears some blame for the goal. Steve thinks he maybe should have tracked the runner better. I
think he got caught wrong side. And just for once in his life, he didn't make that recovery. I didn't think it at the time when I watched it back. I just thought he just got caught slightly on his heels, got caught wrong side because Dembele read it so well. And I thought just for, he always recovers, but just for once he didn't. I mean, he managed to recover. He got himself on the goal line, but I thought he got a bit done by him.
Yeah, I've watched it back as well, and I want to say I think they could have done better, but I think actually it was also really great play from Peterborough. Yeah. I think what Clark Harris does is he kind of he pulls into the midfield like a false 9, and I just basically don't think Husband or Marvin Ekpeta knew how to deal with that. So they both kind of took a step up to try and close him down, Husband in particular, and Dembele is just able to shoot past them as a result, And Knight's pass, it kind of goes straight by Clark Harris. He deliberately leaves it, very much acting like bait, knowing that Dembele's doing the kind of opposite run behind the defenders he's just pulled forward. So I think that was very much like the point. The Blackpool players, did fall for it. But I kind of looking it back, felt it was understandable, and it was probably the only really clever thing I saw Peterborough do the entire game. And like I say, Equiteta's got the pace normally to recover, but Dembele was a shifty little shit, as I called him numerous times later on in the game.
It was a good goal and a good finish, but it really did cost him because it clearly fatigued him throughout the rest of the match, seeing as a number of times he was flat on his arse with nobody near him for the rest of the game.
Yeah. I know you put out a very funny video of a dog on a trampoline that apparently reminded you of Dembele. So do check that out on Twitter, patrons, if you can, if that interests you. I did feel like that was
if he's ever got an end of career like future plan, maybe CBB's the new Mr. Tumble.
It did feel, I completely agree. It did feel like even at 1-1, like I noticed it around the 35, 40 minute mark, it felt like they were falling over and beginning to time waste, even in the first half. And it did baffle me. I'm like, how unambitious. Did anybody else spot that? Was it just me?
I've never seen a goalkeeper start wasting time on a half-hour mark. There's an hour to go. What are you doing?
I know, Joe, you put you put in the chat that you were quite angry about it, but to be honest, I kind of pitied them because it was so pathetic. It was like they were so frightened of. We're a mid-table, newly promoted side in a terrible run of form, and they were that frightened of us that they had to throw. As soon as we got an equaliser, they just started throwing themselves on the floor in the hope of presumably clinging on to that point. And it was just pathetic, and it actually didn't make me angry. It just made me kind of pity them for their, I think you used the word there, Connor, that lack of ambition. And I thought, that the 150 of them had turned up. That must be embarrassing sitting watching that, from whatever it was, 34 minutes or something.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I looked on the clock. It literally said 31 minutes when their keeper was pissing about to take a goal kick. Absolutely unbelievable. And some interesting comments have been put on the message board from their fans on their message board, which was shared. There's something about, I can't believe we can't beat teams like Blackpool with a similar budget. And I'm like, hang on a minute. Didn't you spend millions on Ivan Toney and Clark Harris? Dembele, I'm sure they paid pretty good, decent fees for them. If anything, they've spent far much more money than we have. And I think they finished higher in League One than we did last season. I'm sorry, it's pure easy what it comes down to. And that's the manager. I think he's the same ilk of Simon Grayson. He's just a relic of the past. And they've just given him a new deal, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, which I think a lot of the fans weren't happy about. Although some seem to think that their poor run of form has nothing to do with Ferguson. I don't know, peculiar types of Stockholm syndrome going around in Peterborough. So we'll get on to that winner actually, because I like talking about Blackpool goals. The goal itself, Reece James plays a really excellent through ball to Keshie Anderson. I know somebody commented on it earlier. Keshie's shot is saved. Peterborough aren't quite able to clear it. I think Wintle recycles it. Bowler gets it on the edge of the right-hand area of the box. Runs to the goal line, cuts it back, and Anderson hits it to finally get the goal that he probably should have deserved at the start of the move. I guess kind of there were two things that really struck out from me. The first is we actually saw end product from Bowler in the assist. And the second is I think Reece James and Lionel Keshie are kind of building a bit of a partnership. Would love your thoughts on that.
Sorry, go on, Matt.
No, it's all right. Yeah, I like Kesh on the left-hand side. I do. I prefer him there than in the number 10 role, because I think he has the quality to kind of. I mean, he has the quality to play at 10, and he's very, he influences the game more. But I like the way he sort of disappears a little bit when he's on the left-hand side and kind of sneaks in and does stuff on the sly. And that goal was that, and I agree that statistically, Husband's the greatest left back on earth, but I actually quite like Reece James. He's one of those players that doesn't look anything special, but he actually has some very nice touches, and his attacking play is decent, and you don't notice it as much. You don't notice as much as, say, Garbett, because Garbett's quite a glamorous player. He looks a bit like a Premier League player, and James looks a bit like he always looks a bit like he's about 75 to me. He sort of looks like he should have a Zimmer frame, and he doesn't look like he's going to be particularly a flair player, but he does. He plays some lovely balls. He has a half decent cross on him, and he looks to get forward. And I think, I agree with you. That's a nice little combination building. I can't remember the second part of your question, so I'll stop.
Well, no, I think the point you made around, like, we often think of Garbett as a glamorous player. Like, Reece James and Keshie on Saturday reminded me of Garbett and Keshie against Blackburn, in that kind of, like, they just seemed to be telepathic in terms of always knowing where the one was going to be. And I think they just terrorized the wing back on that side. Like, he never knew where he was meant to be. I think who scored gave him the lowest rating of all the Peterborough players as a result. Like, it just seemed like now they finally built that partnership that Keshie and Garbett had built. And I'm really, really excited to see what that holds for the future. In terms of the second part of the question, I know it was around Josh Bowler finally getting an assist. I think he's had one before in the Bristol City game. But, I know there's been a lot of... He's probably been one of the most discussed players from the fans in recent weeks. Like, should he be starting? Who else would you play? How do you justify his lack of end product? And it really felt like, beginning with this goal, this was a game to begin silencing those haters.
Yeah, I'd agree. It was great to see, because he'd had the chance before, hadn't he, where he'd cut inside and fired the shot, which the keeper just got a tip on, which it was probably going over. But I think that'll have done his confidence good. And then, like you say, it's just good to have that end product. Get your head up and just get the ball into a dangerous area. And it's come to Keshie and he's finished it. So it was great to see. I thought he had a much improved game on Saturday overall, and it's really pleasing to see. And hopefully, he can, if he keeps his place, he can carry that on, because that's been the thing with him, hasn't it? That consistency. And even, to be fair, even when it's not been going for him, at least he's trying to make things happen. And when he's come off the bench, we've looked a bit more likely. He's the one player who is very, very frustrating, but he can have that one bit of magic and make something happen. And it was great to see him. It was, pretty straightforward stuff, wasn't it? Beat your man, get to the byline and cross it. That's what you want from a winger, and it was brilliant to see.
No,
I was just going to say, that's what drives you mad about. Drives you mad about him, is that he doesn't do the straightforward stuff, and as you say, it's not that big a leap from skinning people 3 times, putting 2 of them on the backside, beating the third one again for good measure, and then he doesn't do this easy thing at the end, and he actually did the easy thing, and so that gives us hope. I must admit, though, I did say when we were in the Bloomfield that he'll do something in this game. He'll have a good game, and then he'll buy himself about another 8 starts where he does absolutely nothing, and we all end up exactly in the same place with him, but hopefully he doesn't.
Well, I know Richard in the comments is certainly of that view, saying he's the next Sully Kai, and that he's talented, but he has no end product.
That's the trigger word. We know this.
That's why I was bringing it up.
Our player who got the second most goal involvements last year can be described as having no end product is beyond me. But hey ho.
Well, I think it can be described like that because it winds you up so much. And then Sean with some interesting insights there, saying that apparently Critchley spoken post-match about working with Josh Bowler on varying his game and being more effective. And he believes that he showed that in the performance against Peterborough. So, kind of fairly uneventful from that kind of 27-minute mark onwards, other than their kind of numerous attempts at diving on the floor and time wasting as described. We come out in the second half, at least to my eyes, quite sluggish. We failed to create. I think there's a chance around the 58th minute where Bowler and Gabriel combine well. They get a shot, force a rebound in a corner, and then Madine gets a decent header at the goal before being subbed off around 15 minutes later. And I just wanted to stop at this point, stop on a Madine high point. Should anyone on the pod wish to wax lyrical about Madine, because I don't want to deny anyone that right.
Well, it's a shame Sean's not on, really, because I'm sure he would be the man. Yeah, I thought Gaz was good. I thought he was very good. He scared their defence. But for a matter of half a yard a couple of times, he could have had Lavery away a few times. I thought he was excellent defensively as well. And I thought one thing I noticed about him was he was very vocal. And as I say, the atmosphere was weird. And I could tell why it was weird, because I could hear the players at corners and things, which I can't normally from where I sit. I could hear them shouting to each other. And he was very vocal. He was pointing a lot. He was organising a lot up front, which is, I know I always go on about him, but I think that's something we miss when we haven't got him up there. We've got Lavery, who's 22, who's barely played league football. We've got Yates, who, Jerry's not quiet, is he? But I'm not so sure he's quite got the same authority as Madine. And it's that thing about having captains all over the pitch, and he was pointing, shouting both on defensive corners and on attacking plays. He was really leading Lavery and telling him, no, over there, wider, come inside. And he was constantly leading him there. I agree, he probably could have done better with the headers, actually, that somebody's put in the comments. But he missed one, and he had an absolute tantrum in the box. I heard him swear and then punch the pitch, and then he got up and he'd actually hurt his hand. He punched the pitch so hard. So it wasn't for lack of trying. And I just think the proof in the pudding is Madine is not the fastest, quickest, most skillful player at the club by a long shot, but we can play with some variety when he plays. And, we can play in more than one, we can attack in more than one way when he plays. And we actually had sustained pressure in that game. The previous 3 games it would be, we haven't managed, we've managed one attack every 20 minutes or something, but we had sustained pressure in that game.
Fair enough. I think one thing that I noticed watching extended highlights that I probably hadn't appreciated in the game. In the game, he got the ball a lot, flicked it on, and it never really felt like he was aiming anywhere. It felt like he was just flicking it on for the sake of flicking it on. But when I watched the extended highlights back, it did actually feel like a lot of the time when he flicked it on, particularly Lavery or Bowler were able to get on the end of it. And he just provided that outlet ball, considering that Peterborough kind of packed the midfield and had so many players in midfield, sacrificing the wide areas, but he had so many bodies in the centre of the pitch. Like, it was almost impossible to play through them at times, but Madine gave us that outlet. And I think particularly when you're just trying to get into a rhythm in a football game, you're trying to build confidence, that did seem quite important, even if it became less helpful later on when they began to tire.
Well, it ran out of steam, didn't it? Because the variety's not there. So I'm talking again, but it's like, this is why a lack of Madine or a Madine-esque player is why we end up trapped in our own half against Derby and against Luton at home. We ended up literally trapped in our own half, going sideways, up to the central midfield, a square pass. Oh, panic, no ball on, back to the thing, back to the key, and then eventually, Maxwell hoofs it out into the stand, and We don't have to do that when we've got a bit of physical presence up front, because we can avoid that. It doesn't mean we have to bang it at Gary all the time if he plays, because he's better than that. But it means that we then don't get trapped in our own half, and I think it's fairly simple. Also, he is the greatest living footballer on earth, but that's beside the point.
Well, Jimmy Husband will be very upset you've said that, Matt. You seem to be quite flighty in your accolades today.
I said he was the greatest living left back.
Okay. All right. So around the 73rd, 74th minute, much to Matt's dismay, Gary Madine came off. Jerry Yates on, and then also Sonny Carey came on for Shane Lavery. A switch from a 4-4-2 to a 4-2-3-1, which, as Sean points out in the comments, did actually win us the game, kind of leading to both goals. Bit of a cheeky question I'll point to Joe. Should we have started with the 4-2-3-1?
No, I'm not a fan of it myself. Especially a game where, let's be honest, I know that everybody can say, oh, winless in 7, blah, blah, blah. It was a big game, and it was a big game. I thought the importance was just to get them 3 points. It didn't matter how we played. Didn't matter what formation we were playing in. The most important thing was getting 3 points. And we did that. And sometimes you don't have to play intricate little 4-2-3-1s, and you've just got to dig in there and get whatever result you can. To answer your question, I was perfectly fine with 4-4-2. But saying that, it wasn't working. And we gave Critchley a lot of stick after the Derby game. And I think it's only fair that when he gets it right, you've got to praise him. He changed things up. He changed the formation. His 2 substitutes were spot on. And I agree with Matt. I thought that Madine did have a good game. But we needed to win that game. We needed goals. He brought on Carey, he brought on Yates, and they both bagged a couple. So I've just got to say that, Critchley doubters, eat your words.
Yeah. Nick, I saw you nodding there.
Yeah, well, it was the perfect game plan, wasn't it? Gaz does all of the great stuff that Matt said for 70-odd minutes, change it up, fresh legs, and we go and get the win. And like Joe said, the performance didn't really matter. It was just about somehow getting the 3 points. And yeah, you've got to give him credit. Like we say, if it goes pear-shaped, he gets criticism for it, and it worked perfectly on Saturday. So fair play to him.
Can I just say something regarding this 7-game winless streak that we've been on? Everybody's saying, oh, we've been awful for 7 games, blah, blah, blah. No, we haven't. We've been bad for the last 3 games. Birmingham, Derby, Luton, I suppose. Well, 3-0 at home says we were bad. So, yeah, them 3 games, we've not been at it. The 4 previous games, I think we've played very well, and we were unlucky not to get more points. QPR, we were robbed by a linesman. The guy that got the winning goal for Stoke should have been sent off. And we got 2 very good draws against Swansea and West Brom. So everyone's lamenting this 7-game run that we've been on without a win. It's not like we've been playing awful football for the best part of a month and a half.
Yeah. And
I'd say, sorry, I was just Sean's comment there. I'd agree with Sean. I'd say it's actually 2.5 games we've been bad, because I thought we were good in the first half against Birmingham. I thought we were absolutely on top of that first half, and I fully expected us to come out and finish that game off and win it by a couple of goals. It was the second half where we were absolutely dreadful. We just didn't turn up. I'd say it's 2.5 bad games.
Well, goals change games, don't they? I mean, I'm sure people would be lamenting us being one of the worst teams in the world if them substitutes hadn't come off and we didn't get them. Oh, we've only drawn at home to Peterborough. Oh, that's 8 games without a win now. We're in a crisis. You know what I mean?
And I think people have got to remember that we're just promoted. And I said at the start of the season, we could quite easily go 7, 8, 9, 10 games where we're not picking up many points, and we shouldn't go into panic mode, because it's a tough league. So it's no surprise that we've had a run like that and a sticky patch. And most teams, you look at the division, most teams probably will at some point, even up at the top, they're faltering a bit. So it's not panic. It wasn't panic stations for me at all.
If you'd have offered me 12th place, 30 points before a goal was kicked at the halfway point, I wouldn't have snatched your arm off. I'd have ripped it off and beaten you to death with it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a Blackpool fan who wouldn't take where we are now. Definitely.
Like, I was prepared at the start of the season. I was like, you know what? If we have a poor run of luck, and that poor run of luck means we get relegated by 3 or 4 points or whatever at the end of the season, I would happily stick with Critchley, stick with all the staff, and go again in League One, just because we're going into a very competitive league. We were probably promoted a little bit earlier than we would have planned for, in kind of the squad building cycle, etc., etc. Like 12th is a dream. And I think even, to your point, Avers, like the performances I still don't think have been that bad in the last couple of games. Like if you look at the XG difference, which is like how people like me consume games rather than actually watching them, it's been fairly consistent over the last couple of games. Hasn't deviated from the start of the season where, we overperformed and we just went into a period where we underperformed. I still think we'll be a, 14th to 18th base team. And, we're going to go on bad runs, as Nick says, as a result.
I think another thing that you make a very good point about being ahead of schedule. This is basically the League One team. There's not been massive overhaul. There's been no, apart from Richard Gio, there's no real championship experience in this team. It's basically the team that got promoted from League One. It's basically the team that this time last year were around about the same place in League One, mid-table.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure I'd agree with that because I think there's been a couple of important additions like Lavery, Bowler, Sonny Carey, etc. But I think crucially, they're all players that have come from lower leagues, youth setups, etc., where you would have no right to expect them to perform as well as they're performing.
You wouldn't have been surprised, really. I mean, I don't know about Bowler. I know he'd had a year at Hull, but apart from that, I mean, you wouldn't have been at all surprised if we just signed Lavery and Carey in League One, given their sort of lack of pedigree in the league. And you'd have probably, had we signed them in League One, people had probably muttered about, well, are they going to make it at this level? I mean, I suppose Lavery had played in Europe, hadn't he, with Linfield, but they're not exactly stellar signings on paper before we knew anything about them, were they?
No, exactly. And we're not going to go out there and spend 2 or 3 million on a defender or a midfielder. That's not our model of play. Our model of recruitment, is more what Critchley is doing at the minute. Find these rough diamonds from the lower leagues or overseas leagues like the Northern Irish Premier League and polish them up and then sell them on for a profit and rinse and repeat. And hopefully that'll be the way to sustain our position in the Championship and hopefully make some money off the players that we do bring in and then sign slightly better players and do the same.
To say what will be interesting is, hypothetically, if we get, plucking a figure out the air, 7.5 million for Marvin from Southampton or whatever it would be, it'll be interesting to see how we would then reinvest that and whether we sort of go down the Peterborough route of kind of spending 500,000, 750,000 on sort of players with a reputation, because we seem to have bought players that we've never heard of, but rather than sort of the we don't go and sign the leading scorer in League Two. We go and sign somebody from League Two that we all go, who? Who? What? Never heard of him.
Yeah, and I think my big hope is that also our investments in the academy in terms of wanting to move from a Cat 3 to a Cat 2, etc., they'll also play into that. So it won't just be signing players who have fallen out of the youth system of other clubs like Everton, or Casey, etc., that we hope to then sell on for a profit one day, but also developing our own young players. I know Sean's very big on Rob Apter. I think he's going to be kind of, somebody who'll get regular starting minutes. But my hope is that some of that reinvestment or kind of money from sales will also be spent on making our academy better, so that can form part of the plan and the process.
Definitely.
All right, so we'll start talking now about the impact wonderful players, young players like Sonny Carey had now. I think it was in the 86th minute when Ekpiteta plays a really quite clever through ball through the lines that Anderson's able to get onto in the box.
Do you mean a ball that he boots at the defender and
it comes off his shin and lands at Keshie's feet?
I'm sorry, it's about time we had a bit of luck.
Yeah, agreed.
I refuse to believe it's luck. Just Marvin Ekpiteta's God-given talent that means we're going to sell him to Southampton for 75 million.
Like a crazy golf shot. He was playing me angles.
And underneath that kind of big lanky frame is a really fine appreciation for geometry that none of us can quite get. But anyway, Anderson is in the box. He declines to shoot and instead passes it sideways to Sonny Carey, who's kind of right in the centre, unmarked. Same central position that he'd actually just missed from about 10 minutes ago. But this time he keeps it on the ground and is able to curl it into the bottom right corner to give Blackpool the lead. And I think that's his first goal for the Seasiders. Yeah.
We're all nodding
from the panel. Yeah. Kind of, Nick, going to you, kind of, hopefully that's the first of many for Sonny Carey. I think what makes this goal remarkable is also that it came shortly after missing, 10 minutes before from the exact same spot.
Yeah, so obviously didn't affect his confidence, and he is a confident player from the bits I've seen of him when he's come on. Great for him to get off the mark, and still I know it wasn't a really really difficult chance, but we've seen them skied many times, and it was great composure and good from Keshie as well, just to turn, look up, and slide it across to him, and brilliant for him to get off the mark, and like you say, hopefully the first of many. It'll be interesting to see if he gets a run in the side or whether it's going to be from the subs bench. I think that they're probably playing it quite sort of careful with him, and doing it gradually. But again, when you think where he was playing, I think they talked about this on Quest. The way he's stepped up, you wouldn't know he'd been at non-league. He looks, from what I've seen, he looks comfortable at championship level. So certainly capable of doing it. And like I say, if he gets a run in the side, hopefully he can get a few more goals.
Yeah, I think one thing that probably limits his run in the side, because like you, I want to see him start more games. Sean says in the chat as well, he wants to see him start more games. Is that my concern is that he only can really play in this 4-2-3-1, which doesn't seem to work for the rest of the players, which just seems a bit unfortunate.
I think he's a player who is the thing he's really, really good at is finding space. I mean, to quote one Connor Hamilton, football is a game about space, and Sonny Carey understands that. And his movement for the goal is it's beautiful. It's just he sees what Keshie's going to do. He takes a little step one way and just sells a little dummy, and then just goes 3 steps the other way and takes it perfectly in his stride. It's just sensational for a kid of his age. It's so subtle, but it's so clever because it just completely sells anybody that's with him. And he's very, very effective coming on 65, 75 minutes when the defense is getting tired, when the game's getting stretched, because that's when there's space in the game. And I think he has struggled when he's come on from the start, when the game's very tight, when a team can set up to deal with him and can track him. And he's looked a couple of times lost when we've been struggling and we've ended up going direct, and he's just looked like he hasn't really known what to do because he's kind of drifting around, finding the pockets of space, hasn't really worked there. And I think he's such a talent. He's the player. I can't remember the last player I was excited about as Carey, who was as young as him. And it's just frustrating that he, as you say, he doesn't quite fit, and he doesn't fit the 4-4-2. And yeah, I think I've said everything I've got to say.
Fair enough. Well, we'll move on to the second goal scored by the second of our super subs. About 4 minutes later, the 90th minute, pressing finally pays off. He's Gabriel who wins it high up the pitch. Bowler gets it and cuts it back to Yates, who, basically I think just seems to be keep kicking it against the keeper until it goes in. That it was just a wonderfully scrappy goal, it looked like. Joe, great to see Yates back on the score sheet. What was your take on this goal?
Yeah, like you say, really good pressing. I thought that was not everything we did on Saturday came off. There was a lot of misplaced passing, a couple of shots that were the best. But I think the one thing that we showed on Saturday that we didn't show at Derby was intensity. I thought from the get-go, we looked pretty up for it. We looked energetic. I thought the pressing, while not constant, was good when it needed to be. And that was great to see right at the end when Peterborough's heart had basically been ripped out by that Sonny goal. They actually went for it. They went for the jugular, and good pressing from Gabriel, like you say. And Bowler's put another decent little ball in. I know that he's not exactly tore down the wing, so he's actually looking up for once. And Yates got it at the second attempt. So it's great that he's got a goal. That'll do his confidence the world of good, because I think he is a confidence player. He's one of these strikers that when they get one goal, they seem to go on a little run. So hopefully see more of that at Huddersfield, touch wood if it's on. And I thought it's a shame for him that he seems to be not so much a forgotten man, but whenever we play a 4-4-2, it's usually Madine and one of Yates and Lavery. And I'd be interested to see if Lavery and Yates would work. Obviously, you've not got that aerial threat, and you've not got that player that can win the flick-ons like Sir Gary of Madine can. But I'd be interested to see them two up front together, because if nothing else, that defence, whoever they play against, is going to have an absolute headache, because you've got two lads that are full of absolute non-stop running.
You're talking yourself into another week's ban from the Gary Madine fan club.
Heresy. You'll get excommunicated by Matt if you're not careful. So 3-1 in the end result. That 90th minute goal really being the final nail in the coffin. Going right back to the very start, I'll bring the lineups up again, and we can start doing the player ratings. I'll go from the bottom of the list, the top of the list to the bottom, as soon as I find my little player name banners. Here we go. So, Nick, I'll start with you. Player rating for Mr. Dan Grimshaw.
Well, he didn't have loads to do, but something we didn't mention was right at the end, that save he made. I know the flag went up, but I don't know if it went up for the follow-up or not. Obviously, Grimshaw doesn't know that at that point. It was absolutely incredible. I think probably you look at it again and it just gets better and better. It was absolutely phenomenal. Other than that, he didn't have loads to do, but I'm gonna go an 8 just for that save. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Mr. Danny Grimshaw with an 8, leading the way with what's probably going to be a string of high scores. Joe, I'll go to you next on Jordan Gabriel.
Well, points per game with Jordan Gabriel at right back, isn't it? I thought he was excellent. Thought he had a really good game. Again, the pressing, whether it be from defence or further up the pitch, I thought he had a really good game. Doesn't shirk away, even when things aren't going for him. If he does a misplaced pass, he'll chase the ball down and try and get the tackle in. I really like him. I think he should be our first choice right back, and I'm going to give him an 8.
Another 8. Calls in the comments for a 9 for both Grimshaw and Gabriel. Also clearly two very popular players. We'll go now on to Mr. Marvin Equiteta. Matt?
Yeah, I thought Marvin, even though I did wonder if he was a bit culpable for the goal, but I thought he was sensational second half. I thought he really was. We had a spell, we haven't really talked about the spell where I felt we were a bit shaky. They were on top, they were pressing. They had a few chances that they didn't really make, or sort of potential for some chances that they didn't really turn into chances. And I thought Marvin was absolutely stunning in that period of the game. And I thought he actually had one of the best games I've seen him have for a while. So I'm going to go for a 9 for Marvin.
A 9 for mine. So the first 9 of the evening. And I know many of the listeners also felt he was one of the best performers. I'll kick us off on James Husband. And we think he was probably another one of those players who, despite playing out of position, also put in one of the best performances. I think his performances in recent weeks have been they seem to get better and better at centre back until I think all consternation or concern about him playing in that position seems to have evaporated with how many key blocks he gets, how good he is in the air in terms of winning stuff, how much he puts his body on the line. Like, he's come from one of those players who used to groan at seeing in this position at the team sheet to really somebody I've quite embraced. Kind of Nick, going back to you, we'll tackle Mr. Reece James playing at left back rather than the centre of midfield like he was at the beginning of the season. How did you find him this match?
I thought he had a good game. Yeah, he's definitely better at left back than the centre of midfield. I thought he was solid. It was a great, as we talked about earlier on the show, it was a great through ball for the in the build up to the first goal. And I thought he defended well. So overall, I will go 8.
Another 8. I think we're averaging solid 8s all across now for most of these players. So always signs of a good performance. Next up is Ryan Wintle. Joe, your thoughts?
I'm going to give him a 7. I thought he had a decent game, but some of his set pieces are diabolical. If you're a professional footballer taking a corner, you should be able to beat the first man. And he didn't do that several times. So, a 7.
Fair enough. I think maybe a little bit harsh on the set pieces front. Like, I don't think
no, you're a professional footballer. You're a professional footballer. You should be able to beat the first man at a corner. You've been training all day. It's it's something basic. Don't do supersonic P-rollers for corners. Get it in the box.
But like, Blackpool aren't good at set pieces, full stop. I think it's a bit unfair to single Ryan Wintle out for this, considering how
not really. He was taking the corners. So,
but
there's also it was on set pieces. Everything else he did very well, but his corners are rank. Sorry.
All right, so you're marking him down for set pieces. I feel that's harsh given how bad the rest of the squad is.
7+.
Oh, there we go. Bit of bartering has managed to get him to use a fielding system and award a few extra marks. Matt, does Kenny Dougal deserve the same level of scoring, or does he get something a little bit higher?
Did we actually do James' husband? Did we actually score him?
I did James.
Oh, you did him. Sorry, right. That's fine. Okay, yeah. Kenny Dougal. Kenny Dougal. Yeah, 7+ again. Same. I couldn't really split them. Actually, no. Dougs can have an 8 because he probably put a few more snarling tackles in than he had done in the previous week. So I'll give Dougs an 8.
All right. Let's see. And then Josh Bowler, man of the hour, 2 assists. Like you said earlier, Matt, I'm really hoping this is going to be the first of many, as opposed to the start of another completely anonymous period, as it was, in terms of his goal against Fulham. I'm going to give him a 8+, mainly because I've been hurt by Josh Bowler before and don't want to get too bullish and to give him too high a mark, because I know he might just go MIA for the next couple of games.
not to go on a massive tangent, but I did notice that the other players were pointing a hell of a lot with him. It was almost like they were under instructions to make sure he does what he's told. I noticed 3 or 4 times players really kind of, like you would with a kid, kind of going, Josh, go over there. Josh, come back. And they were really, really talking to him. And he was listening, to be fair. He was doing what he was told, but it was notable.
Well, I think that's what we've always said around Bowler, is that you can see there's an excellent player there if he just makes better decisions and his decision-making is kind of ironed out by better coaching. And if that has to be on-the-pitch coaching, then just do it.
I've got visions of Forrest Gump at the American football game now when they all tell him to stop. The players telling Bowler where to go. Brilliant.
Well, unfortunately, Josh Bowler isn't like a box of chocolates. You always know what you're going to get, which has been his downfall so many times.
We say that, but you know the Yates goal, he just passed it straight away.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Looked up.
Yeah, just what we want to see from him.
It's because he didn't have to go on a run. He weren't knackered.
Right. Now, we'll go on to, I think it is Keshie Anderson next. And Nick, I think you're up for this one.
Yeah, I thought he had a great game. Obviously scored and got an assist. I think we say this every week, settled into the championship so well, and he's a key player for us, particularly with, you look at the centre too. We don't create a lot from the centre of midfield, so there's a lot more onus on the players like Keshie, and I thought he had a great game. I am going to go a 9.
A 9. I think that's absolutely deserved. I know he was at least my man of the match. Joe, Shane Lavery, one of the attacking players that didn't score or get a goal. Was that signs of a poor performance, or was it actually just kind of one that was a bit under the radar?
I'd say somewhere in between. I'm going to give him a 7- because obviously he didn't set the world alight on Saturday, but I kind of felt sorry for him because he was making decent little movements and little runs, but nobody was like seeing the pass or the run. Obviously, I think he's very similar to Jerry. I think once he gets a goal, he'll go on another little run. I just want to see that little bit of nastiness back from him, because in his first little spell where he was scoring for fun, he was like a little terrier and, sliding in with naughty little tackles. In fact, he did an actual brilliant tackle on Saturday and got pulled up for a foul on it, which doesn't surprise me, the standard of refereeing in this division. And then he got nailed with one where somebody went clean through the back of him and we played on. But hey-ho, that's championship refereeing for you.
I thought this referee was particularly bad.
He was awful. And I'm glad that we've won and we can say he's awful, so it's not just sour grapes. But I think that Laverly's luck will change eventually. Hopefully at Huddersfield. But yeah, 7-.
That's fair. One on the refereeing point, one thing that stuck out to me is in the first half when the referee just got absolutely lathered by a long ball by one of the centre backs, hit him straight in the face. And then I looked at his decisions later in the game and did wonder if he needed to go in for a bit of a concussion test. Just inexplicable, some of them.
Yeah, Marvin should get an extra point for his score for that one.
But for smacking the referee, fair enough. Or if it's a bounty system, cash bonus if you can hit the referee. Right, final player of the starting 11 is Mr. Gary Madine. And it can be really only Matt that we're allowed to expound his virtues in. The Gary Madine sermon.
I feel like the kid at Christmas, the little kid who gets when they do the pass the parcel and it's, you get to open it, and everybody's older. 8+ for Gaz. I would have, had he scored that first half header in the corner, I think I would have probably been on the pitch, and I would have probably met John as he came on the pitch from the other angle as well, because it would have been the perfect Gary goal. Direct from a corner, glancing header, steaming at the far post, but it wasn't to be. He had a good game. I'd give him 8+.
Fair enough. Eight plus seems a little low. I'm worried you're going to get yourself
Well,
excommunicated
I'm going
from
on
the
a
Church of
relative
Madine
scale
now.
here. I'm going on a relative scale here that I thought Marvin just shaded it. So, and I gave Marvin a 9. So I don't think, I thought, to be fair, I thought both Marvin and Kesh had more impact overall on the game, with Gary a distinguished third.
You know, it's a tough audience when even the greatest player in the world ends up third on your player rankings.
Well, I don't want to be accused of, some would say I'm just a mere boring one-note person who's built some kind of simulacrum for a personality out of my love for Gary Madine, but I want to make sure that we don't think that. So there we go.
All right, well, showing love for some other strikers. Jerry Yates came on off the bench and played great 25 minutes of football. Nick, how would you score his performance?
Well, great energy when he came on, and as we've said already, it changed the game, didn't it, with the subs? So, not the most spectacular goal he'll ever score, but he was there in the right place at the right time. He was persistent, and he hit the back of the net. So it's an 8 for me.
Fair enough. Excellent. And then, Joe, similar score for Sonny Carey?
Yeah, I'm going to give him an 8. Very impressed with the fact that he didn't let his head drop when he missed that first chance. And saying that first chance was a lot more difficult than people are saying. It came at him, he had to hit it on the volley. If anything, maybe he hit it a bit too well. I don't know. But, yeah, kept his head up. And, in fact, I'm going to give him an 8+. Just for the knee slide. Very nice knee slide after the goal.
Love a good celebration. A lot of 8 so far, and I've just realised one of my new purchases over the weekend was a little tangerine hat with an 8 on it. So I'm going to put this on now. There we go.
This is great audio podding.
There we go. And then finally, we end up with manager ratings. I guess I'll start with you, Matt. How do you feel Critch did with the lineup, the tactics, and the substitutions?
Yeah, he did very well. I was very harsh on him after Derby. I think I scored him a 1 at Derby because he didn't appear to try and win the game, and nothing worked. So I'm going to give him 9 here because I think everything he did worked. His setup worked. We attacked. I enjoyed the game. I was entertained. We put lots of effort in, and his 2 subs worked. And actually, I must admit, when I saw the subs were coming on, I saw it was taking off Madine and Lavery. I thought I was, what are you doing? Why are you taking them both off? No. And he shoved it down my throat. So I'm going to give him a 9+. I'm only taking points off because it's Peterborough and we always beat them. But I'll give him a 9.
9 for Critchley. Joe, Nick, any disagreements?
No, same score for me. I agree with what Matt said. I was a bit, when he took both of them off, is this going to work? And to be fair to him, it did. So he got it spot on. So it's a 9 for me.
I'm going to give him a 9+ because of the little bit of teasing with the fist pump at the end.
Oh, yeah.
He looked like he was going to go. Then he stopped. Then he went. And, as I put on Twitter before, I've missed my Saturday fistings.
Children, if you're listening, ask your parents about that one. I completely agree. I think Critch gets an 8 or a 9 out of 10 from me. For me, it felt like one of those games where the entire team executed the way he wanted to play. It felt like we pressed high. We actually won the 3rd goal from pressing it high. We dominated on the wings, which I think is how Critchley wants us to play. I think goals 1 and 3 were both from wing play. And every single goal really was created by that kind of type of cutback, short, low cross that you see teams like City do all the time because they're just such an effective kind of pass to make. His subs were clearly effective. It felt to me like this was a match that very much kind of the Critch philosophy and the Critch way of playing won. And I think it's important, when that's the case, you can't do anything but score him highly.
I said last week that this wasn't a must-win game, but I will admit now that if we'd have lost it, I'd have been going into the new year with a little bit of fear and looking a bit more desperately at the transfer window. I think we showed a lot of, without meaning to sound like Steven Gerrard, a lot of character from when we were behind, especially on the back of the bad run that we were on. I thought once we got the equaliser, there was only one team in it. Yep, Peterborough had a lot of the ball. I think the stats show it was 60% to them and 40% to us. If you look at the shooting stats, they had 2 shots. The goal they scored and the save that Grimshaw's had to make at the end. We absolutely peppered them. We were patient. The goals came. The substitutes were spot on. Critches at the wheel, and things are all well again.
Well, I think he's got to get a lot of credit as well for chucking Carey on to win the game, because that's quite a brave choice, isn't it? Because he's not, he's never scored. We're going to send this lad who has never ever scored in league football on to win the game for us, and he does. And I think Carey also really deserves a lot of credit for, after skying that. Well, he didn't really exactly sky it, but putting that one in the north stand.
Yeah, it was a difficult chance, to be fair.
It was, but it was the moment. You're a 19-year-old lad. You come on, you sent on to win the game. The ball's cut back to you, and you put it in the north stand, and everybody in the ground goes, "Oh!" And he sort of, when you watch it back, he's absolutely gutted, and he clears his head and he goes again. And I think that's the thing that's possibly most impressive about him. Let alone, never mind his touch and his ability and his ability to find space, is that he clears his head and he goes again. He cocks it up, shrugs his shoulders, and the next chance is a fresh one.
And that's the confidence the coach will have given him as well. Like that mentality in such a young player comes from, at least from my opinion, a supportive and the right kind of coaching environment. Okay, so time to appoint our man of the matches. We put a little poll out on Twitter yesterday, asking for your opinions. For just over 40% of you thought that Ekpiteta should be man of the match, beating out Bowler, Grimshaw, and Anderson. But worth noting that in a lot of the comments as well, we've got Matt coming in there saying, "Where's Gary?" More people saying it needs to be the Gary goal machine. Bison's chiming in saying we're lacking in quality, as Bison's does. Yeah. Usual optimistic outlook. And quite a few shouts for Gabriel as well, from Kelly and Simon. Kind of fans clearly kind of thinking it should maybe be Ekpiteta, Gabriel, or Madine. Nick, who was your man of the match?
Close one. I'd probably say just Marv. Over the 90 minutes, they had a very, very good game. Excuse me, it was close. I think Keshie was excellent as well. Bowler had a very, very good game as well, which was great to see, as did Gabriel, but I will go for Marv overall.
Fair enough. Popular with the fan base as well. Joe, who was your man of the match?
I voted for Ekpiteta. Obviously, goal aside, I thought he had a very good game. And any player that smashes the ball in the referee's face definitely gets my vote. So, yeah, Marvin Ekpiteta.
Yeah, I love your score. I love your scoring criteria, Joe, which is hitting the referee and celebrations.
Yeah.
2 underrated parts of the game.
It's what the fans love to see.
As well as a corner that beats the first man.
Obviously, yeah.
I used to have a pair of school shoes that are incredible for taking corners in, because they were a bit too small. But my mum wouldn't buy me any new ones until like the next summer. So the leather had all like really stretched. They were like, footballers always wear half a size too small and then stretch them. And I could deliver an incredible corner in those school shoes. And I've never, ever been able to take a corner as well in any other kind of football boot or shoe. So maybe that's what Ryan Wintle needs, is a pair of old school shoes.
I'm going to say we still got them. Can you give them to Ryan?
Well, they're probably a tip somewhere.
What about a corner that doesn't beat the first man but does hit the referee?
Oh.
It'd have to be retaken, wouldn't it? Oh God, Jesus. No, it'd have to be retaken, wouldn't it? Because any ball that hits the ref, it gets spotted up again, doesn't it? So if you took a corner and it hit the ref straight in, it'd probably have to be retaken. So you could just, if he was the first
he kept
man,
hitting the ref from corners.
if it's Ryan Wintle taking the corner, it keeps hitting the ref. It's just, but there,
Still be there now.
That's purgatory, isn't it? Ryan Wintle taking a corner, hitting the ref.
Oh, it's Dante's final circle of hell, right? Wintle hitting the referee forever and ever. Right. But Matt, who was your man of the match?
Marvin
Again. Clear consensus then. Marv gets the man of the match performance. I think for me he was as well. I think if we're able to keep him in the summer, great. If not, we'll surely be able to command a fantastic fee for from a Premier League side. I think he's got 18 months left on his contract.
How much did Harry Maguire go for? Because he's garbage. Didn't he go for about 80 million?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at 80 million for Harry Maguire, surely you're getting at least 20 million for Marv.
I don't know. I mean, Harry Maguire's white and plays for England, which probably affect that number somewhat. But I agree. I think if we should be aiming for at least, double-digit millions. Right. So Marvin given the man of the match status. High scoring ratings all around, everybody getting an 8. And crucially, the number that matters in 3 points on the board. We're at an hour and 15 minutes, so it's probably time for us to end it here. Before you go, please do check out our Patreon page where, for the price of a pint a month, you can contribute to the ongoing costs of the podcast in terms of stuff like setup equipment and streaming service fees, etc., and things like that. Appreciate it's Christmas and money's a bit tight at the moment. So if you can't do that, please just
Alka-Seltzer for John.
Exactly. Get some hangover materials for John. But if you can't contribute, just click like and subscribe on the YouTube. Help us get those metrics up and help, or just send us an email with some nice feedback. Whatever float your boats, we want to wish everybody who's listening and anyone who's listened to the podcast over the last year a really merry, happy Christmas and up the pool.
Up the pool.